Hello everyone. So this is the presentation video for a project named Router Configuration Management using GitHub, which was completed under the guidance of Qazi Faisal. And the team members are Vinit Maken, Kavya Sharma, and Mukul Joshi. Now my teammate Kavya will move further with the next slide.
So in this presentation, we will be covering the contents that are shown on the screen. So firstly, we will talk about the introduction of the project. In this project, we focused on the router configuration using GitHub, and we use netmiko and Pygithub Python libraries. Using the same libraries, we downloaded the files from GitHub and configured it back to the router. And also in this project, we can back up the router configuration using Python and other tools in case the need arises. The main objective of this project is to back up the running configuration file to GitHub from a GNS3 lab setup. In our lab, we have used Ubuntu Docker, router, and switches in order to configure and back up the running configuration of our router to GitHub. Now, Mukul will cover up the Git and GitHub difference.
Git is a version control system which lets you track changes you make to your file over time. With Git, you can revert to various states of your file, like a time traveling machine. While GitHub is an online hosting service for Git repositories. So coming to the next slide, that is understanding SSH. SSH or secure shell is in a network communication protocol that enables two computers to communicate and share data. It offers a variety of robust authentication options and uses strong encryption to ensure the security and integrity of the conversations. So now my friend Vinit will continue from now on.
Now let us understand the Python libraries which we used in the project. So Python libraries are mainly developed to use certain functionalities of the Python. So we use the netmiko and Python. That's why we use the netmiko and Pygithub library for the project. The netmiko library is developed to access the routers and for the network automation purposes, while the Pygithub libraries was developed to access the GitHub modules and repositories. So we use the netmiko library to access the router, and to upload the router config, we use the Pygithub library. Now let us see the network topology of the project. So here we have used a Ubuntu Docker and a router which we are accessing. Here is a network switch, and this is a local layer 2 switch, and this is the NAT. So we are accessing the router R1 from the Ubuntu Docker using the Python script. Now my team member Kavya will explain the initial commands which we used on the Ubuntu.
So for installation of our Python libraries, we have used pip install netmiko, Pygithub, and paramiko on our Ubuntu Docker. And after that, we have configured SSH on our router using 4 different steps of our SSH configuration. Firstly, we configured the host name of our router. We selected it as R1 here. In our next step, we have configured our DNS domain. By default, RSA name key is composed by host name and domain name. Here we have used cisco.com as our domain name. And in our next step, we have generated an SSH key by entering the following command in our Cisco router CLI, which is crypto key generate RSA. And in our last step, we have enabled SSH transport support for the VTY, for which we have created username as wireless and password as Cisco, so that we can access our router through SSH. Now we will go through all the commands that we have used in our Ubuntu Docker. Firstly, we will create a file name which is backup.py. We can use any random name. Here we have used backup.py, and we have created our Python script which is saved in nanobackup.py, and we can access our Python script by writing the following command. In order to execute the Python script, we will write python3backup.py command in our Ubuntu Docker. Once the configuration is done, we will reload the GitHub page and it will show all the updated file in our repository of our GitHub.
So now let's have a look at the demonstration video which we have recorded earlier. In this project, we are managing the router configuration, in which we will create a backup of the router configuration file and upload the same on that of the GitHub. And we have created this network which connects the router 1 to the Ubuntu Docker, and using this topology, we are simulating the scenario.
In the first step, we will talk about the router configuration. In order to configure our router, I have assigned the IP address dynamically. So I have used DHCP for my router configuration. And after that, we have enabled SSH on our router. And you can see the commands which we use to enable SSH. And we have used SSH to let the Ubuntu Docker access the router using the Python script. So firstly, we have enabled SSH, and then we have assigned username and password. Username is wireless and the password is Cisco. And I have used show IP SSH in order to check if our SSH is enabled or not. And as you can see, it says SSH enabled, which means our SSH is enabled on our router. Now, for the next step, we will talk about the Python scripts, and Vinit will take over it.
So for this project, we have used three libraries that are Paramiko, netmiko, and Pygithub. So let's see what the Python script looks like. So to access the router, we have used the netmiko library, and the netmiko library will access the router using these credentials. And as we know, the IP address for the router is 192.168.122.124. And as Kavya mentioned, we have implemented the username and password as wireless and Cisco. So further in the code, the netmiko library will send the command show run to the router, and the router's configuration will be saved in the Ubuntu with the file name router_1. Now it is time to upload the file to the GitHub. Using the Pygithub library, we will upload the file to the GitHub, and I have given my repository access to this script using which the file will be uploaded. So the repository name is wireless project, under which the file will be uploaded as the name now.txt. So let's see if this works or not.
So now, in order to check if the script is working, we will run the Python script, and as you can see, it is in the initiating process. And now we have just, as we can see, now the script is running successfully. Now we will just access the GitHub and check if the file set is updated or not. So as you can see, it will be showing as right now. So it's just in a few seconds, it has been updated. Now, as Vinit mentioned, we will have a file named now.txt, and in this file we can just basically see the router configuration, as you can see right here.
So a further add-on to the project can be made by creating a text file on the GitHub with the name routerconfig.txt. So we have written these commands on this text file, and we will try to download this text file onto our Ubuntu using the command shown on the screen. To configure it to the router, we will write this code, and we will access the router using the following details, and the routerconfig.txt will be configured onto our router. So now let's see the execution of this. So here we can see that the loopback address of 1.1.1 was configured onto our router, which we had written on the config.txt file.
The project concludes with an aim of automating the process of configuring and backing up the routers using simple steps through Python. We are grateful to our respectable teacher, Mr. Qazi Faisal, whose insightful leadership and knowledge helped us to complete this project successfully. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.